welcome to the Soar to Success Summit. I'm Vanessa Levin, your host, and joining me on this stage today is Dan St. Romain. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Vanessa. I'm really glad to be here.
And we're excited to have Dan back again this year at the Soar to Success Summit because his knowledge about behavior is endless. And so he's going to talk to us today about how behavior and play are related. So let me tell you a little bit about Dan in case you're not familiar with him. Dan St. Romain is a national independent educational consultant who provides staff development and services to educators and parents working with children at all developmental levels. After receiving his master's degree in early childhood education, Dan has worked in both private, residential, and public school settings, as well as the Educational Service Center here in Texas. Dan's overwhelming strength is his skill as a presenter, and he is also the author of these two fabulous books. You're probably going to want to write the names of these books down. He's the author of Teach Skills and Break Habits, Growth Mindsets for Better Behavior in the Classroom, and his newly released book, which I'm really excited about, Positive Behavior Principles. And he also has many social skill resources featuring the popular character, Chameleon Juan Pablo. Yay, we're so excited, Dan. Let's get started. Are you ready?
Absolutely. I'm always ready to talk. That's the problem.
Well, in today's session, we're going to be talking about play. Obviously, that is our focus of the entire summit. And the title of this session is Follow the Leader, Behavior Lessons Learned Through Play. And once again, Dan, the title intrigues me. So we understand these words, right? We understand the word play and we understand the word behavior. But can you help us understand the connection between the two, and where does follow the leader fit into all this?
Absolutely. Well, let's start with play, since that's what the whole summit is about. And that's sort of the natural order of things. And if we talk about play, then we have to talk about wants and needs if we're going to look at the connection. So I'm going to ask you, Vanessa, why do you think kids want to play? Like, just basic answer, why do kids want to play?
It's fun.
It's fun, absolutely. And of course, I'm a little older compared to many of the viewers, but to quote Cyndi Lauper and adapted a little, kids just want to have fun. And fun is obviously the natural order of things for kids, because kids are based in this idea of joy and wonder. Like, that's inherent in young children. And I would venture to say that's why most of your viewers got into early childhood. You know, it would be fun to take all the viewers and ship them into high school and have them teach high school for a little while. Vanessa, how would you like to go and teach high school? Would that work well for you?
No, Dan, I would be crying every single day into my Cheerios.
Yes, we like working with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds because they bring that sense of joy and wonder. And I don't know about you, Vanessa, but for me, I can be having the worst day in the world. It doesn't matter. And some child is going to walk in and say something random, and I'm just going to burst into laughter. I think there aren't enough adults with the joy and wonder of young children. So when we look at young children and we look at this idea of play, they want to play because it's fun. Play represents joy, wonderness, positive emotions. Kids want to be happy. So the next question we have to ask ourselves is, why do kids need play? So I'm going to go back to you, Vanessa, and I'm going to ask you this question. What are some of the games that you played outside when you were younger and you were growing up? What were some of your favorite games to play outside?
Oh, we used to play Red Rover, and Duck, Duck, Goose, and Red Light, Green Light, all these great games. Yeah.
And do you know what's so interesting is we need play because play provides experience. And experiences are very important. Now, you said that you played Red Rover in these different games. And what I would tell you is those experiences taught you a lot of things. So what are some of the things that you learned by playing those games? Like when you played Red Rover, What is one lesson that you learned by playing Red Rover, that you think has helped you as an adult? What's a lesson you learned by playing that?
Probably take waiting for a turn, and waiting for my name to be called. I think those, and obviously as an educator, I know the importance of those. But let me just frame it in the easiest way can say it is I was just waiting for my name to be called so I could run, right?
That's exactly right. You learned how to be patient. So, why do kids want to play? Because it's fun. But why do they need play? Because play provides experiences that teach. And the way we learn is through experience. That's the behavior connection. So, when you ask me about play and behavior, kids play because it's fun, but they need to play because it provides experience that teach. Now, I'll never forget when I was very young. I am the last of six children, and my sister and I played Witchy Poo. Like, I don't know what this game was about, but my sister taught me. And you do what your sister tells you. So, my sister and her friend would take me out to the fire hydrant, and they would take those chains on the fire hydrant and just like attach me to the fire hydrant, and they were the witchy poos. And then they would go off and play for hours on end. Like, I don't know what the game was about. I just knew I liked playing witchy poo, and it took me a while to realize that I needed to be assertive. I learned how to be assertive and say, yeah, no, I don't think I want to be strapped to the fire hydrant today. And if I would have never had that experience, I might not have learned how to be assertive. So games provide the opportunity to teach. They provide experiences. So what's the problem? If games provide experiences, and if we look at kids in today's society, even our youngest learners are spending more time on video games, in front of TVs, in front of computers. And the problem with that is that screen time is replacing human interaction. I have nothing against electronics. The problem is when kids are in front of screens, they're not getting experiences that teach them how to behave. Virtual play has replaced experiential play. So you have to understand how this is working. Why do kids gravitate towards video games? Because they provide the joy and wonder and excitement that they're craving, that's natural. The problem is those screens are not providing the hands-on experience that teach in the same way. And what's the problem? If you don't practice at something, you don't get better. It's why early childhood teachers are spending so much time dealing with behavior, because kids don't have the practice behaving. When I was younger and when you were younger, Vanessa, and we played outside, we learned how to behave through those experiences. So when we stepped into that pre-K classroom, we behaved better, not because our parents punished us. We behaved better because we had experiences that taught. So kids want to play because it's fun. They need to play for the experience, but because of the virtual play, they're missing the experience. So why do I throw in follow the leader into this whole title? Because I think the best way to shape children's behavior is to follow their lead. Follow the lead of providing more positive, playful experiences that are based on positive emotions and use it to teach. So if they're not getting those experiences outside of the classroom, they need to get the experiences in our classroom. And if we can follow their joy and wonder and try to do it with positive emotions, then we're feeding their need while still providing an opportunity to teach. Does that at least give you an idea of how follow the leader, play, and behavior all fit together and why it's important?
Absolutely. And as always, you are so good at breaking it down into these easy to digest, understandable pieces that make perfect sense to me, and I'm sure our viewers as well. So, thank you for that very clear picture. I think that it's going to be very helpful to so many of our viewers today. Um, so, what that brings me to my next question, Dan. For our viewers watching who are ready to start providing playful experiences to shape behavior, how can they do this? Can you give us some very specific examples to help us out here?
Absolutely. And the good news, Vanessa, is the suggestions that I'm going to give them are things they're already doing. So I like concrete things. So three vehicles. How many vehicles?
3.
Yeah, we're going to have three vehicles. I think there are three things that teachers can keep in mind to do, 3 vehicles to use that's following the child's lead. If children enjoy joy and wonder and they want positive experiences, no one wants to be in a bad mood, Vanessa. No one wants to be upset. No one wants to be angry. And we don't want learning to sit on negativity. We want learning to sit on positivity because we want children to have positive emotional connections to behavior. So, how do we provide more joyful experiences? Well, the first vehicle, obviously, are stories. We talked about that extensively in last year's summit when we talked about literature, language, and learning. And as we talked about, Vanessa, doesn't matter what kind of day a child is having, you stand up and you say, "See you later, alligator." You pull out a children's book, and what happens? You see kids laughing, you see kids happy, you see kids jumping up and down. And you know what? Sometimes I'll pull out a book and look at it, and I'm like, yeah, that book is not very exciting. It doesn't matter. If I read it with the joy and wonder of a 3, 4, 5 year old child, they do this. And guess what they learn? They learn how to pay attention. So, for example, with this one, this is called "See You Later, Alligator." An alligator wants to sleep all day long because he's so tired. And Mama looks at him and Mama says, "Wake up, alligator. We got a busy day ahead." And alligator's, "I'm too tired." Alligator wants to sleep. And guess what? Mama has groceries to do. Mama has shopping to do. Mama's got all this stuff to do. But alligator wants to play with Play Doh. He wants to build things with Legos. He wants to sleep. And at the end of the book, Mama has all this fish that she's eaten. And alligator's going, "I want to eat." And she says, "Sorry." You see, if you don't do what you need to do, you don't get to do what you want to do. First, we do what we need to do, then we get to do what we want to do. Now, here's my question. Do you think that book, just looking at the book about alligator wanting to sleep all day, is that obviously about behavior? I would say no. But can you connect it to behavior? And can you teach kids the idea that first we do this, then we get to do this? That's a behavioral lesson. So even though it's just a good children's book, it teaches a good behavioral lesson of needs and wants. And then, of course, there are tons of books. These are just books I truly just picked off my shelf. "Don't Push the Buttons." And it's about a little creature that wants to push the button so badly. He wants to push it so bad. It's like, "Don't push the button." Now, that's just a silly little children's book. But are there a whole lot of things kids want to do, but they shouldn't do because it's not safe? Absolutely. So sometimes I can tell kids, sometimes it's really, 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 really hard. But Vanessa, we always think things in our brain. In our what?
Our brain.
Yeah, we think things in our brain. And it's important that when we think about something, if a teacher told us we shouldn't do it, and we know it's not the right thing to do, then we think that in our brain and we don't do it. You see, just because we want to do something doesn't mean we get to do it. You don't always get what you
Want.
want. That's right. You don't always get what you want. So realize in the book, "See You Later, Alligator," we learned all about the idea of doing what we need to do before we get to do what we want to do. And in the book, "Please Don't Push the Button," even though it was a silly, fun book, we talked about the behavioral idea of following directions and understanding you don't always get what you want. Now, Vanessa, I could go on and on and on. There's so many stories. I mean, I'm huge with children's literature, as you know, so I love having fun books. But I will tell you what we talked about last year, which is teachers inundate me with, "Can I have a copy of your books, your books, your books, your books?" And I tell them, you don't need special books on behavior to really follow the lead of children. Just find good children's books and make behavioral connections. And of course, we can always increase the joy and wonder by having little puppets and things. 1, 2, 3, cheep, 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 cheep. So whenever we're using stories to teach, stories are the first vehicle, I think, that feed into the joy of children. Now, after stories, another vehicle, obviously, are songs. "If you're happy and you know it, touch your nose. If you're happy and you know it, touch your nose. If you're sad and you know it, say I'm sad." If you're sad and you know what, say I'm sad. Okay, that's just a fun song. But that one, just like this one, we're going to shake, shake, shake our sillies out, shake, shake, shake our sillies out. Both of those are songs. And Vanessa, when you sing songs with children, again, I think songs like stories just feed into the natural fun and joy of learning with children. But when I'm singing those songs, I'm naturally going to be able to teach lessons. Like with those two, I can teach the idea of using our words to express our feelings. It's okay to be mad, but we don't throw a pencil across the room. We use our words. So I can sing a song, but I can still connect it to behavior. Have you ever seen a lassie, a lassie, a lassie? Have you ever seen a lassie go this way and that, go this way and that way? Okay, it's just a silly, fun song. But guess what kids are learning how to do? If I'm going around the room and it gets to a child, I say, "Have you ever seen a lassie?" They have to have two gestures. So the kid might go this way and that way, and another child goes this way and that way, and another child goes this way and that way. So guess what they're having to learn how to do? Make good, independent choices because they're having to use their brain and think. So where happy and you know it and shake your sillies taught emotional development and using your words to express your feelings, the Lassie song is teaching how to make choices. Now, of course, Vanessa, you know I have a whole bank of songs that are specifically designed to teach. I pay attention with my eyes. I pay attention with my ears. I pay attention staying quiet. Or, I want that one, I want that one, so do you, so do you. We know we can share, we know we can share. So, you know, I've developed a whole lot of songs specifically around behavior, but you don't need songs necessarily about behavior. When you start singing songs, you're going to find you can teach behavioral lessons about using words to express your feelings or any number of things. So, vehicle number one are using stories to teach behavior. Vehicle number two are using songs to teach behavior. And then, obviously, the third one are just simple activities. Things like I Spy. Did you ever play I Spy when you were growing up?
I most certainly did.
And guess what you learned? You learned how to pay.
Attention.
You learned how to pay attention. And you know what? We already talked about it. You pay attention with your
Eyes,
eyes and you listen with your
ears.
ears. So, another one, and we could spend tons of time on this. When you played Mother May I, you'd say, Mother may I take 3 steps forward? And sometimes, guess what Mama said? No, no, you may not. So you learn, you know what you learned how to do in Mother May I? Accept no for an answer, accepting disappointment. Or duck, duck, goose, duck, 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 goose. And guess what you learned? How to be a good friend. Because when you were playing duck, duck, goose, and you went around that circle, if you slam someone on the head, no one picked you. It's like, why won't anyone pick me? That's called natural consequences, Vanessa. So if you're mean to others, they might be mean to you. So whether it's I Spy, Mother May I, Duck, Duck, Goose, realize all of those vehicles of activities can teach important behavioral skills. So when you ask me, going back to the question of how do we get started, it's easy. We use stories, we use songs, and we use activities to teach things like accepting disappointment. First, we do this, then we get to do this, following directions, making good independent choices, being a good friend. So those three vehicles feed on the natural and wonder of kids, but they do it in a way that's fun, but they also do it in a way, Vanessa, that allows teachers to teach behavior. So guess what's happening now? Now I'm embedding behavior into natural contexts inherent in young children. If play is something they enjoy doing, I need to attach the behavior to it rather than making it a separate vehicle altogether. Does any of that does that at least provide specifics of ways to start this whole process?
I think it's absolutely what we all needed to hear. I want to thank you so much for that very clear and concise explanation about um, the examples of the things that you're already doing probably. And I also want to thank you for reminding me about Mother May I had completely forgotten that game until you said it. I loved playing Mother May I. That is a real blast from the past. So yes, thank you for reminding me about that one. I'm going to add that to my
And
teacher tool bag. Go ahead.
well, and I was just going to say, what's so funny is I go into so many pre-K classrooms that have Head Start funds or whatever, and I open up their cabinets and games just pour out. Games
Mhm.
that have never been opened. And I think sometimes in an attempt to create experiences, we go to the store and we buy all these
Mhm.
box games. And there's nothing against that, Vanessa. But it's just like, I don't know about you, Vanessa, but did you ever buy your child this really expensive toy? You went to Discovery Toy and you spent this a whole lot of money and you got this really cool game and you sat in front of your child. The child pulls the game out and climbs in the box.
Well, Dan,
Like,
that
has that ever happened?
That happened this Christmas with my nephew. I We bought him, of course, everything because he is the only grandchild in our family, and he played in the box absolutely every time. That's exactly right.
And you're like, I paid a lot of money for that toy. Play with that toy, boy. And the reason
Exactly.
I tell you that is because I think we get so overwhelmed with, oh my goodness, we need to do this, we need to do this, that we default to quick and easy. And I'm not
Mhm.
trying to be offensive here, but it's like, here's a game, it tells me what I'm supposed to teach. When all we have to do is go back to Duck Duck Goose, Follow the Leader, Mother May I. Those games provide the best experiences and they're really, really, really hands on. So sometimes I think we try to recreate when really what we need to do is just go back to the basics of the fun games that we played because they provide tons of natural opportunities for kids to learn how to behave. We just have to provide little tweaks here and there.
Absolutely, Dan. And this all sounds very doable because, teachers already use songs, books, and games to teach. So, what you're suggesting really is just connecting these experiences to behavior. Do you think that's the piece that we're missing?
Actually, yes, but I don't think it's through any purposeful fault of teachers. But if there's something I want teachers to remember, it's that teachable moments and making those connections are critical. The problem is we all have traps. Vanessa, I talk a lot about how our practices sit on our belief system. Well, many of us grew up in a generation where we were punished. Like that's how behavior was shaped.
Mhm.
In addition to experience, when we did something wrong, we were punished. Well, here's the problem that when I really analyze this, and I'm way too analytical, metacognition, but I really believe that when we default to punishment, I thought, why do I not advocate for punishment? And this is why. Remember, Vanessa, we talked about how play sits on positive emotions and everyone wants to be happy. Everyone wants to have positive emotions. No one says, I hope I have a really bad day today. No, we want positive emotions. Well, here's the problem. When children are punishment, when children are punished, punishment sits on very, very negative emotions. And guess what, Vanessa? I never want a child to behave to avoid punishment. Like, I don't want fear to motivate kids. Do you know why? Because it robs kids of joy. So when we default to punishment as a way to shape behavior, we're going back to that negative place. Negative place. I don't want that. Punishment also stifles learning. When you get upset and when you get angry and when you are in trouble, then what happens is you shut down. I want us to focus on teaching. So, you said, what's the missing piece? One of the missing pieces is when we default to punishment rather than default to teaching. So, if your viewers can really think when kids misbehave, rather than punishing, we should teach, several things are going to happen. So, I'm going to give you some examples of some. Um, a child makes a mess in a center and he doesn't clean it up. Punishment looks like this: Michael, go to timeout. Okay, he doesn't go to timeout saying, oh, I made a bad choice. Next time I'll make a good choice. They're like, I don't want to be in timeout. Negative emotions, shut down, not thinking. Teaching is, oh, Michael, look at me. Oh, look at me. Put your hand on your nose and say, I can clean up. And he's like, what? I can clean up. And I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to help you. And you sit there and you get on the floor with them and you laugh and you have fun and you clean up with him and you shape the behavior and you talk about how, oh, look how clean you made it. Your friends are going to be so happy. Do you know why? Now they can use this center and we're going to have so much fun. Give me a high five. What center do we want to go to next? You see, that's the difference between teaching, or that's the difference between timeout and let's clean up. That's the difference between timeout punishment and teaching. Or let's talk about a child that says something rude to another friend. And do you know what? Punishment looks like this. Mary Beth, go ahead and move your clip. Okay, how is moving her clip going to help her be a better friend? No. Mary Beth, sit down. Sit down with me. Do you know what? We talked about your happy heart. Remember, you have a happy heart. Sometimes you have a sad heart. Words can really, really hurt friends' feelings, or they can make them feel really, really good. So when I look at you and I say your hair's really, really, really fancy today, does that make your heart feel good or sort of sad? Does it make you happy or sad? Yeah. Do you know when someone tells you you don't like their picture? Do you think that makes people, okay, guess what I'm doing? I'm talking through it. And that discussion affords kids teachable opportunities to whereas the move your clip doesn't do that. And people say, but Dan, when I tell them to move their clip, we talk about why. I agree, but I'm still trying, when we use the clip system and say move your clip, we're still trying to use negative emotions and fear and avoidance to get them to behave. I don't want them to behave out of fear or negative emotions. I want them to behave because they understand the teachable moment. And the last one is two kids are fighting on the playground. I've used this example so many times. What do we normally do? Sit out of recess. We've talked about that before, Vanessa, on the summit. How is them sitting out of recess going to shape their behavior? It's not. They're going to be sitting on the sideline going, I want to go back. I want to go back. Okay, but I don't want that to be the motivation for them to behave. I want to pull those kids together and I say, guys, let's practice being good friends. Look at me. You are such a silly goose. Give me a big thumbs up. And he's like, now you see, some people would say, well, you're he's having fun. He's going to misbehave just so he can have fun with you. No child starts to misbehave to have fun with me. But I want to focus on the idea of teaching versus punishment. So when you say, what's the missing piece? One of the missing pieces is we fall into the trap of punishing rather than teaching. That's one trap. Another trap that we have is rigor void of joy. So if you want to connect behavior and play, you have to make sure that when we're providing behavior and teaching opportunities, that we're having fun doing it. Behavior problems will surface. I think too, sometimes we think, oh, that we've got to get this done. We've got to get this done. We've got to get this done. I've got to get this kid reading to this level. And Vanessa, I understand that your viewers don't have control over what they have to teach. But do you know what I don't want, Vanessa? I
What?
don't want a pre-kindergarten student reading at a third grade level in pre-K, but he hates to read. I don't want kids to have a skill, but they hate doing the skill because we forced it down them too soon. So rigor without joy is dangerous. So the second a task starts to become arduous, the second a task starts to have too much negative emotions, we need to step away from it. Now, Vanessa, I do understand not everything's going to be sunshine and roses. So when things get a little hard, that's normal. But when you see a kid really shutting down, it's better to step away and come back to it because I want the learning to sit on positive emotions. So, in addition to jumping on punishment bandwagons rather than teaching, another danger is when we have rigor and we get so focused on the academics that we lose the joy. We want kids to enjoy learning, so we need to make sure that we're making sure that we're providing opportunities to really feed that. Another thing is we have adult expectations versus kid expectations. I think one of the dangers of having troubles connecting behavior with play is sometimes we lose that whole play focus because we don't understand or we don't remember the mind and development of the child. So I want to give you a couple of vehicles to make sure that we're not robbing kids, or not vehicles. We've already used that word. I want to give you three things to think about that I think if we don't understand this, we're going to rob kids of joy. So the first one is time and movement. My question is this, Vanessa, can young children sit for long periods of time?
Absolutely not.
No. Developmentally, we know that kids' attention spans and kids' ability to move are impacted by their age. So young children can't sit for long periods of time. And if we go to have them sit for too long a period of time, that's an adult expectation. When I need to follow the child's lead and say, okay, young children can't sit too long. So the child expectation should be we break this up because they can't sit too long. Or attention. Vanessa, have you ever been doing an activity with children and you look around and like no one, the whole entire class is not looking at you. Like they are playing with things on the carpet and looking around the room and you're like, okay, who am I teaching? Who anyone with me? Come back to the teacher. And they're like, squirrel, 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 squirrel. Does that sound familiar, Vanessa?
Yes, one year I had to do interventions with students and I had to follow a scripted program and I had to read the script to struggling students. And I was forced to do that. And I just looked around and I was like, this is a waste of my time and their time. They were not listening to this script.
Yeah. And the problem is that if we get too focused on adult expectations, then we start to forget what kids are able to do given their own, if you will, expectations. They expect that they're not going to attend long because that's what they're used to. Remember, when they were playing outside and doing other activities, they would jump from activity to activity, activity, activity. And we try to condition them to pay attention for far too long a period of time. So another danger is adult expectations versus kid expectations and what's normal for them. So one thing I tell teachers all the time is, and I learned it from a good friend of mine who is a behavior consultant, behavior is feedback. And when you have misbehavior, when you have behavior problems, my friend Joe Mascaro, she always talks about this idea that if a child's throwing a fit, they're trying to tell you something. They might be trying to tell you that this is too hard, or I'm not ready, or there's not enough joy in this activity. Now, Vanessa, I've told you before, not everything can be 100% joy and wonder. But you and I both have been teaching children before, and we stop and we think, okay, I hate doing this. I'm not enjoying doing this. And if I'm not enjoying doing this, surely a 4-year-old child is not going to enjoy it.
Mhm.
So if we can remember that whole idea that behavior is feedback, then we can start to say, what is this behavior trying to tell me? And then modify accordingly. So remember that punishment rather than teaching is going to create problems. Rigor without joy is going to create problems. And then adult expectations versus kids' development, those are going to be problems. So I do think that the missing piece is that behavior connection. But I think one of the reasons why teachers aren't making that behavior connection is because we get overly focused on adult expectations, rigor, and then teaching without joy.
Absolutely. I love it. And just for anyone watching who wonders what I did about the script, I threw the script away and closed my door just so that nobody thinks that was my idea. I needed to put the fun and the joy into my teaching, like Dan said. So um, I really, you're preaching to the choir here, Dan. I love everything you're saying. One thing I always tell teachers is that when we use these punitive measures and we use punishment, it just teaches some of the children to avoid being caught. we're just
Absolutely.
we're teaching them how to be stealthy and sneaky. I mean, honestly, that is what we're teaching them. So I really, really love what you have to say, and I want to circle back to this idea of follow the leader that's in your title. It sounds like you're advocating we approach behavior by following the lead of our students. And can you give our viewers some specific strategies for doing this, especially when we're talking about those difficult behaviors, not just fighting on the playground or the common things, but the really most difficult behaviors? I'm sure you have some great ideas for us.
I don't know about great ideas, but definitely am I opinionated and do I know what works for me? Yes. It's funny that you mentioned that, Vanessa, because the new book that just came out called Positive Behavior Principles, I outline 9 principles for shaping behavior. And over the course, let's see, I worked in our early childhood center for the last 17 years. Just finished up in May. And over the course of those 17 years, and forgive me, some of your viewers have heard me talk about this, but when I first got to the early childhood center, all the teachers used the clip system. They used smiley faces, they used frowny faces, they used, stickers and prize boxes and rewards and punishment. And over the course of the 17 years, we got rid of all of that. And so I ended up developing a body of work called Positive Behavior Principles. And in it, I outline 4 prevention principles to prevent misbehavior, 3 intervention principles to deal with intervention, and then 2 crisis principles. So when you talk about specific strategies, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give your viewers a couple of the strategies that I talk about. But here's what I want to make the connection with. Our strategies always need to go back to the natural state of our kids. So whenever I go to intervene behaviorally, I want to think, where is the child coming from? It's called, obviously, being child centered. And I think we do that in a lot of ways, but we forget to do it in behavior. So, first state I want to talk about is called joy and wonder. We talked about how kids want to be happy, like everyone wants to be happy. So, one of the principles that I talk about are modeled behaviors are internalized. You're a role model. You're a role model. Forgive me, Vanessa, I have gestures for everything. And so I always tell my teachers, I'll say, make a box like this and say, I am a role model. In fact, I'll get your viewers involved. Vanessa, you can help me too. Do it with me. I am a role model. After you.
I am a role model.
And so I tell them, think about a mirror. Why do I tell you that? Okay, so I'm going to go back to a very specific example that I use with parents a lot. Did you see the movie The Titanic with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet? Did you see that, Vanessa?
I sure did.
There's a scene in there it's a sad one, but it's a great teachable moment. Towards the end of the movie, the ship is going down, and Celine Dion is singing "Let It Go." That's not the song. She's singing some song. Anyway, and the ship's going down. They've already like locked the bottom deck, and everyone's not going to make it. And they're playing the music, and it's dramatic. And then all of a sudden, the video person zooms in on a mother tucking in her babies. Now everyone's about to die, and the mother's smiling, going, "I love you. I'll see you in the morning." And she gives him a kiss on the head. And everyone in the theater gasps. And I'm like, that's it. And my wife looked at me and said, "What do you mean?" I said, that mother understands that there's chaos and crazy all around her. But do you know what? This is what kids need to see, because kids come from a place of hope and joy, and that's where they want to return. And she knows there's nothing she can do about it. But in the face of crisis, she models joy and wonder. I tell you that because if modeled behaviors are internalized, have you ever had a child really, really, really upset? Really, really upset because he didn't want to clean up and they're throwing a big old fit. Well, teachers will look at me like I'm crazy because I'll walk in there and I'll say, clean up, and everybody clean up. And I'll walk around and I'll poke the little child in the tummy and say, "You bet you can't be serious. Bet you can't smile. I'm going to make you smile. I bet I can make you smile." He's like, and within 2 seconds, he's laughing. Within 3 seconds, he's helping me clean up. And we've just moved along. And what I'm going to tell you is, when kids are upset, when kids are angry, no matter what it is, we need to be modeling joy. Now, yeah, I have a bad day, and sometimes the kids, I'll say, "Mr. Saint remains sad," or "Mr. K." I want to model a range of emotions. But when kids are upset, I need to model a healthy way for them to get out of that state. And punishment just teaches them to dig their heels in more. So if their state is joy and wonder, our strategy needs to be modeling happiness and modeling getting out of it. Because whenever you are upset, when you have internal anger, you're looking for external calm. So, one very specific strategy is model happiness even in the worst of time. Positive, 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 positive. And if a child's coming, oh, I'm mad, I'll say, I get mad too, but then I move on. So their state is joy and wonder. Our strategy is modeling positive affect in all situations. Their state, another one, is attention span. Okay, they don't pay attention long, and what we need to know is attention magnifies behavior. Put your hands like this and say magnifies. Do it with me. Go ahead.
Magnifies.
Attention magnifies behavior. So the more attention we draw to behavior, the more kids lock down. So I'm going to give you an example of that. You'll have a child that comes in school and she's like, I miss my mommy. I miss my mommy. And she crawls under the table. Now, some teachers will crawl under the table with the child, say, oh, honey, I know you miss your mommy. Sometimes I miss my mommy too. That makes you sad, doesn't it? I'm like, no, 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 no. That can work with some children, but here's the deal. I want to get that child's attention off mommy, not ingrain it further. And when I talk about mommy, I'm feeding that. Do you see what the young child is doing? Is they're going, mommy, 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 mommy. Well,
Mhm.
think about the attention span of a child. Have you ever been talking to a child and all of a sudden a child looks at you and says, you have a booger hanging out of your nose? Or you ask them a question, you ask the whole class a question about a book. Please don't push the button. Did he want to push the button? Yes or no? When a little child raises her hand, you're like, what? She says, I got a new puppy dog. Like, has that ever happened to you, Vanessa?
Absolutely.
Like, it happens all the time. Kids' attention spans are very small. You know what we need to do then? When they're obsessing over missing their mommy, we need to capitalize on their short attention span by really trying to get them off that. So I'll give you a very specific example. A child crawls under the table, is playing or is going, I miss my mommy, I miss my mommy. Rather than going over and feeding that attention, I go up to another child very close to the child under the table, and I'll look at that child and I'll say, I bet I can beat you in thumb wars. The other child's going, I miss my mom. And the other child's like, what? And the other child starts to look at the child and will say, oh, look at me. Let's play thumb wars. 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a thumb war. I'm going to get your thumb. I'm going to get your thumb. Within less than 30 seconds, that little girl that has crawled under that table crawls out from under the table, runs over and says, I want to play. I want to play. And I'll say, oh, sit crisscross applesauce, show me. Oh, let's play now. Squirrel. You see, since their attention span is really small, I want to use that. I don't want to say against them, but I want to use their natural state of short attention span to help distract them and get them out of that obsession about mommy. So rather than drawing attention toward children's behavior, we need to draw it towards fun activities, towards teachable moments, towards what they want to do next. So working with their joy and wonder, we model appropriate behavior. Here's the mirror. And with their short attention span, attention magnifies behavior. We want to draw attention away from the problem towards to something positive. The next one is emotional states. Vanessa, I'm sure you have been very, very upset, like I have been upset. Have you ever tried to go to sleep when you were upset, Vanessa? You're really upset and you tried to go to sleep. How did that work for you?
It doesn't work well, Dan.
It didn't work well at all. Do you know why? It goes back to that attention span. Adults have longer attention spans, and guess what we do? We obsess for longer periods of time. We hang on. Well, here's the problem, Vanessa. Put your hand right up here and say shuts down.
Shuts down.
The thinking brain shuts down in times of crisis. Becky Bailey talks about that extensively in Conscious Discipline, how you can't teach when people are upset or angry, and the brain shuts down. So I'm going to give you a sad but funny example. I worked at the Early Childhood Center, as I said, for a number of years, and I loved going in and dealing with misbehavior. Well, one year I get a call, it's the third week of school, from the principal at the elementary campus. Now, I work at the early childhood campus with the kindergarten kids. Then they go on to the elementary campus. Well, it was a new principal that I had known for years, but he was the principal of a high school. And then they moved him to the elementary school. I love this story. And he called me and he said, Dan, are you busy right now? And I said, no, I'm doing social skill lessons, but I can step away. Why? And he said, because Blake is under my desk and he won't get out. I said, what? He said, Blake. I said, oh yeah, I worked with Blake last year. He said, he crawled under my desk and he won't get out. Dan, I've used every trick I know. I can't get him out. I've told him I was going to call home. I told him that when he went back, he was going to miss his recess. I told him, and I'm sitting there just absolutely crying. I'm laughing so hard because I'm thinking this principal is approaching this from the mindset of an adult expectation. He's approaching this from a standpoint of fear. He's robbing this kid of joy. And the principal meant well. But I said, you know what? I'll be right over. And all the way over there, Bart loved to crawl under tables and he'd get upset. And I walked into his office and I said, oh, Mr. Johnson, you have a child. He's underneath your desk. I think it's a little puppy dog under your desk. And the principal looked at me like I was crazy. He said, what? And I looked at him. I said, is it a puppy dog or a kitty cat? He said, what? And I said, you don't know anything. It's a puppy dog. And I looked up and I said, you know what I know? I know puppy dogs like to bark. And then I hear this from under the desk. Woof. And then I was like, I think it's a puppy dog that's hungry. Sometimes I get hungry too. And I know it sounds funny, but truly within about 3 minutes, Bart crawled out from under the desk and he said, hi, Mr. Saint Romain. And he gave me a big, giant hug. And I said, you silly goose, what are you doing under that desk? Now, you know what's so interesting is, again, I'm going to go back to this mindset. Do you know how many teachers will look at me and say, well, that child, he's going to start acting up, so you'll play with him. He's just doing that to play. No, he's not. He wants to return to a place of joy and wonder. And if I can approach that emotional state, knowing that when you lock down, he doesn't want to be in that emotion. He doesn't want to be upset. He doesn't want to be sad. So if I can use distraction, and if I can help that thinking brain that's shut down get out of that place, I'm going to do that. Because if I can help him move out of that place of fear and anger, then I'm in a better position to say, boy, Bart, you were upset when your teacher said that that you didn't get to be the line leader today, didn't you? Sometimes that makes Mr. Saint Romain upset too. Now I can go back into the teachable moment. Now, guess what? People say, well, there were no consequences. Yes, it is. You know what? When he was in the office and as we were discussing it, he missed out on, this activity and he didn't get to be with his friends and the other friends got to do this. Like there are all kinds of natural consequences. He doesn't need extra ones. So let's say that Bart was upset because he didn't get to or he didn't get to be line leader. Well, guess what? Because he didn't get to do that, he also didn't get his name picked to maybe be the caboose because he had to leave the room and he ended up with the principal. So all kinds of natural negative consequences. I think sometimes when we put in extra consequences, we just make it worse. Natural consequences will shape better. So emotional states, starting with an emotional state and understanding that when kids shut down, we need to get them out of that state. And the best way to do that is to go back to that joy and wonder. Last thing that I'll talk about with this section is movement. Okay, Vanessa, have you had whirling dervishes in your class where you're like, oh my goodness, this child cannot he's bouncing off the walls, truly bouncing off the walls. Have you had that before, yes or no?
Yes, Dan, absolutely. I've totally had that happen in my classroom before.
I laugh because I think about my second born child, and this is sort of an embarrassing story. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever told this story to anyone. But my second born child, let's just say he was challenging. Many of your viewers who have seen my presentations know I talk about Micah. And Micah, it wasn't that he didn't want to sit still. He could not sit still. And I know many of your viewers have that in your classroom. And what's interesting is Micah got really, really, really bad eczema, like really, really bad eczema. And we tried these different creams and they weren't working. And the pediatrician said, well, you need to put Vaseline all over his body and then wrap him in plastic wrap. Like, what? I'm like, excuse me? He said, put Vaseline all over him and then wrap him in plastic wrap because that will insulate that heat and that will really break through that eczema. Well, this is my child that cannot sit still at all. And to this day, I will remember my wife and I, right before bedtime, trying to lube up my child and then wrap him in plastic wrap. And he was all over. And of course, because it was Vaseline, he's slipping all over the place. By the time that child went to bed, we had Vaseline on the ceiling. We had Vaseline on all the walls. It was on his stuffed animals because he was just pinging all around. But I think about that a lot because when we think about children in our classroom, a lot of times teachers will default. And I really go off on this, Vanessa, a lot because pre-K teachers will come and say, well, that child's so ADHD. And I think, well, there may be a disability there, but here's the problem, Vanessa. At age 4, 4-year-old children were not designed to sit still for long periods of time. 4-year-olds, by their very nature, are wired for movement. Now, yes, we might have some kids that can sit still for long periods of time. But Vanessa, I want you to go back and think about what you were doing at age 4. I want you to go back and think about activities for you at age 4. We didn't have sit down in a desk and let someone direct teach you. We had 100% experiential learning, all called play. I tell you that because when you ask me strategies for following children's lead, one of the biggest strategies is we have to remember that young children need movement. So I'll give you the example. I can't tell you how many times I've done this. A teacher will say this child can't sit still, and I will grab 3, 4 different children that just are, you can tell they're bouncing out of their skin. And I'll like, Mrs. Johnson, may I borrow Michael? And these 3 children, yes. And we go outside and I'll say, I wonder who can race to the other side of the playground. I wonder who's going to win. And yes, I do talk about winning and losing. And we do have races. And I don't let everybody win because that's not the real life. No, natural consequences. I say, let's have a race and see who can get to the other side fast enough. Realize I'm teaching a skill there. But the other thing I'm doing is they run as fast as they can. We have a winner, we have a loser. We do that a couple of times. And they get to me, and all of a sudden I'll say, oh my goodness. And I'll say, what? And I'll say, put your hand right here. And they put their hand right here. I'll say, is your heart beating really fast or really slow? And they're like, it's beating really fast. And I'll say, bet you can't slow it down. Bet you can't slow your heart rate down. And they're like, what? And I'll say, I wonder if you stay real still, if you can slow your heart rate down. And they're like, and then we run again. And then we slow it down again. And we talk about taking deep breaths. And we talk about counting to 10. And we talk about staying real still. And I teach them that your brain controls your body. It's one of the lessons in all my sets of lessons. Your brain controls your body. And so guess what you can do? You can speed your heart rate up and you can slow your heart rate down. Speed it up and slow it down because your brain controls your body. So I teach them their body is like an engine in a car, and you can speed it up and you can slow it down. Do you know what that's doing? That's, Vanessa, I'm sorry to do it to you, channeling their behavior. Think about behavior like a body of water and do the gestures with me. Say, channel their behavior.
Channel their behavior.
Behavior is like a body of water. If a flood is coming your way, Vanessa, you can't stop it. You can build bricks, but that water is going to find a way. Well, guess what? Young children need to talk and young children need to move. And if you don't allow them to talk and move, they're going to do it anyway and drive you crazy in the process. So if their need is movement, then we need to make sure that our strategy involves physical activity. When kids are angry or upset, what happens, Vanessa, is chemically everything locks down in the brain. Everything slows down. Oxygen slows down. Connections in the brain slows down. Blood flow slows down. But do you know the nice thing about the human body, Vanessa, is we're wired for survival. So the brain is always looking to get back to what we call homeostasis. When kids get upset, when kids get angry, when they get frustrated, their body really wants to get back to a place of what? Joy and wonder, because we want to be happy. So when you get kids up and moving, and I'll say, Michael, sort these marbles for me, and I'll give you 200 marbles. Or I say, Michael, take this note to Mrs. Johnson's room, or whatever I'm doing. When that child gets up and moves, the second he starts moving, what happens to oxygen? It increases. What happens to blood flow? It increases. What happens to neural connections in the brain? They strengthen. And guess what happens, Vanessa? the body releases chemicals to try to get you back into that place of or out of crisis. Maybe not joy and wonder, but it's trying to get rid of all those negative emotions. So physical activity is one of the best ways. You talked about, Dan, can you talk about dealing with severe behaviors? Yes, I can. Model appropriate behavior. Use distraction, drawing attention away. With regard to emotional states, trying to get them out of that place where the brain is shutting down and understanding that it is easier to channel behavior than to stop it. So if you can get kids up physically moving, then you're going to be more likely to get them out of that place of crisis and return them to a place of homeostasis, where then you can move them to that third tier, which is joy and wonder. There's distress, negative emotions. There's normal amounts of stress, eustress, which is positive stress. And then there's joy and wonder, distress, eustress, and joy and wonder. So when kids get into a place of distress, you want to get them into eustress. Distress is bad stress, eustress is good stress. I laugh about this, Vanessa, because my wife says, why stand up when you can sit down? Why sit down when you can lie down? And we talk about how she needs a little stress in her life. Otherwise, she'd never get out of bed. Like, she's like, I really need to go to the bathroom. I don't want to. But she said, if I didn't need to go to the bathroom, I'd probably stay in bed all day long. So having a little stress in our life is good. That's called eustress. But when kids are in a place of distress, we need to get them back into a place of when they're in distress, we need to get them back into a place of eustress so we can then move them into a place of joy and wonder. Because my biggest goal, Vanessa, what I'm most proud of is we do a lot of behavior shaping, but at the end of the year at our early childhood center where we have pre-K and K kids, they still love school. They still love us. They're still in a place of joy and wonder. And your pre-K teachers know exactly what I'm talking about. They have watched their children leave their classrooms so happy and so excited and exuberant. And then they go to the next grade level, nothing against those teachers. And the mothers come back to your viewers and say, wow, kindergarten's not like pre-K. My baby misses you. And you watch as they go from K to first grade to second grade to third grade, and you watch the joy getting sucked right out of it because we start to have adult expectations and we lose that joy and wonder. I think kids naturally have joy and wonder and play and laughter and fun, but inadvertently we take that out of the equation and that's what kills us. So it's time for me now, Vanessa, in wrapping this up, to quiz you. We
Okay.
said, we talked about this, we talked about the mirror, and we said joy and wonder. And what is this? Do you remember what the mirror represents? You are a role.
Model.
You're a role model. So you need to model appropriate behavior. We also talked about this. We said that we need to understand that kids' natural inherent ability to pay
Attention.
is based on their attention span. So what did we say? Attention magnifies. What's that word?
Magnifies.
Attention magnifies behavior. So draw attention away from misbehavior rather than feeding it. Vanessa, do you remember what the thinking brain does in times of crisis? It
Shuts
shuts.
down. Shuts
Yeah, it
down.
shuts down. So when the thinking brain shuts down, we have to use distraction and we have to try to move them from a state, do you remember this? From distress to eustress and
Stress.
back to what are those two words we talked about? Joy and
Wonder.
wonder. And then the last thing we talked about is the two basic needs of kids are they need to talk and they need to move. So rather than trying to stop behavior, behavior is like a body of water. What should we do? Do you remember? Don't stop behavior. Body's like a body of water. We should, your viewers know, channel it. Say channel it.
Channel it. Thank
Don't
you, Dan.
stop behavior. You're good. Channel the behavior. We want to channel their behavior. So infusing joy and wonder by modeling, understanding attention span by drawing attention away from misbehavior, understanding that when they're in distress, we need to move them out of distress, and then understanding that with movement, they need to move because movement is going to help all those endorphins come out and it's going to put them back into that place of eustress where we can then move them into a place of joy and wonder. So in closing with all of that, I want to tell you this, Vanessa. All experiences, not worksheets, all experiences that are based in joy wonder, and positive emotions put us in a much, much, much better place to potentially teach and shape behaviors than any punishment will ever do. Does that help you with specific strategies?
Absolutely, Dan. And I just want to share with you, you talked about how parents coming back to you and saying, boy, this grade is nothing like what we had with you. We used to joke in my grade level in pre-K that we should put remember the Peanuts characters, Dan, and was it
Oh,
was it Lucy who put the sign "The doctor is in"
oh
out?
yeah.
Yeah, we used to joke that we needed to put that sign on our doors because so many parents would come back to us and say he really misses you and he misses pre-K and it's so different. So yeah, I absolutely agree with 150%, 200% with everything
I
that
just
you have said. Yes.
I apologize. I think about the current state of our country, and I'm not going to get into that because that is a whole separate podcast. But I think about just a lot of aspects of the state of our country, from health issues to political issues to all kinds of things. And I think, how would our country be so incredibly different if, as we got older, we kept some of that joy and wonder, just a little of it? I'm not saying all of it. We have to grow up, we have to learn. But do you know what I love? Vanessa, you might know, or you do know, that I have 4 children. And my youngest son, Max, he's somewhere in the background in the red. But, my kids are much older now. And Max now is, he's much older. Okay. He's 18, 19, 20. I don't know how old my children are. That changes. Their ages change. But do you know what's so funny is Max has always had the joy and wonder of a kindergarten child, always pre-K kindergarten child. And to this day, I said the other day, I said, let's go out to eat. He said, oh, I love restaurants. Like, this is a 19-year-old, 20-year-old child. Or I'll say, hey, Max, let's go downstairs and work in the garden. He said, oh, are we going to use the trowel? Like, I know it sounds really funny, but I'm like, I wish all adults had that joy and wonder. And that is why, Vanessa, I believe your viewers went into early childhood. Like, they went in because they loved it. Well, if that's the case, then we need to find ways to extend that. Because it used to be, Vanessa, I don't know if you can remember this, but it used to be where high school kids didn't want to go to school. And then all of a sudden it was middle school kids that didn't want to go to school. And then all of a sudden it was like fourth and fifth graders that didn't want to school. And for my lifetime, over the last 30 years, I've watched that progression go down. Well, what is wrong with our system when we've got first graders that are going to have to go to school? I'm like, really? How have we robbed the joy and wonder of children that quickly in children? So I apologize for going off about that, but I tell you that because we as teachers have the ability to impact that. We cannot change the standards, but we can definitely impact how we approach children.
I love it. I love it. Dan, in closing, tell us what is that, for all of you out there watching who've been at the summit for the last few years, that we always end with the same question for all of our speakers, and that is, what is that one gold nugget you want all of our viewers watching today to walk away with?
Joy and wonder, obviously. Now, Vanessa, I want you to sort of look behind me, look around me. I have reminders all over about joy and wonder. Now, Vanessa, I started out, your viewers may not know it, but I started out in residential treatment centers on the south side of Chicago, working pre-K through 12th grade. So I've worked with kids at all levels, but I choose to work in early childhood. And what I want to, well, now I'm going to go off for a minute, but your viewers, like me, we chose to work with young children. And sometimes I think we forget that. We like working with young children. Your viewers remember that at the beginning of the year, but we sort of lose that joy and wonder as the system overwhelms us. So I put a lot of reminders, put a big sign up in your room that says joy and wonder. Because I have a lot of reminders. I laugh. Sitting on my desk are these bricks. And they're little bitty bricks where kids painted them and they put little pictures in them. And I just love these. And they're like, why do you have bricks in your classroom? I said, because it reminds me of the simple joys. I have a stick behind me. One of Mary, one of my students, just painted this stick and put birds all up and down it. And Mary was much older. Mary was like, I think 14 or 15 years old. But socially and emotionally, she was very, very, very young. And Mary had sort of the joy and wonder of an early childhood, student, even though she was much older. And when I look at all these things and I surround myself with joy and wonder, it allows me to approach every situation through that lens. So when your viewers are dealing with behavior and dealing with problems, if they can go back to how can I go back to help my children finding joy? So when you ask me what is the one, nugget, your teachers have to remember that they can't lose the joy either. Because if they're not enjoying their adventure, and if they're not having fun, and if they're not finding ways to infuse joy and wonder into what they do, they can't pass that on to kids. You know what I want, Vanessa? Is I want joy and wonder to be the default for kids. So if we're constantly finding ways to infuse fun back into the equation, positive fun experiences, then that's going to be the default for our kids because we're trying to develop habits. I want the students in our settings to have joy, wonder, fun, and positive emotions as the default because I never want the system to squelch that out of the equation for either your viewers or the students with whom they work.
Wow. I think that's amazing because if indeed this were on Facebook, they would all be tapping the screen and doing little hearts right now, Dan. Because that is how so many of our viewers feel right now. They feel like, and I hear this from them daily in all the social media channels and email and in our group. They feel like the joy has been sucked out of their classrooms. And I think what Dan is saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but that the teacher can bring the joy and the wonder, right? And they can do it in very simple, easy ways to keep the children, in that place, in that very essential place they need to be. Yeah.
There are so many things that we can't control, Vanessa. We can't control the standards. We can't control the number of kids in our classroom. We can't control our curriculum. And I get that. But I think too, and I'm not trying to make this sound easy, Vanessa. I know it's very hard. But remember how I said attention magnifies behavior?
Mhm.
I think too often as a teacher, I end up getting overwhelmed with all the things I can't control. Stephen Covey called it your circle of concern and circle of influence. We obsess over things we can't control. But do you know what we can control? We can control our attitude. My wife taught for years and years and years and years and years, and the school would get sort of yelled at, if you will, sometimes for scores not being. And my wife says, you know what? I listen to it all, and I take it all in. But when that door shuts, I'm never going to let that rob me of my joy. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to make sure that I don't pass on any of the negative system stuff to my kids. I'm the wall where it stops. And so your viewers have the potential, even though they have a lot of negative strikes that they might have to deal with. I don't want them to obsess over that. I want them to use
Absolutely.
their team and I want them to use their children to help feed that joy and wonder so they enjoy their job again because we control our affect. We may not
That's right.
control a lot of things, but we can control our attitude. So sunshine, roses, lollipop. And when you're having a bad day, think, well, at least I'm not with high school children. So sometimes it's all about that perspective. And especially with our health crisis and things that we've dealt with, we're starting to now realize the things in our lives that really matter and the things that don't matter. So we need to really step back and focus on at the end of the year, I want my child, even if he didn't learn anything, and of course we want them to learn tons, but at minimum, I want my child to walk out of my classroom happy, having loved school, having had a positive experience with healthy relationships.
Absolutely, Dan. Amen. So, Dan, let our viewers know where they can find you. I know they want to continue the conversation with you. So, let us know where they can find you and also where to find your books and all of that great stuff, please.
Not a problem at all. Well, now that I'm retired, my schedule, people say, do you do staff development? I get calls all the time doing staff development. And now my calendar is opening up a little. I am still going back to my early childhood center I'm volunteering so I can go back and do all those lessons. So every 2 weeks, I go back to the Early Childhood Center to do all of my lessons. But for the last 17 years, I've taught social skills. I go into the classes every 2 weeks and pay and teach following directions, paying attention, getting attention, etc. So I'm going to keep that. But I tell you that because if your viewers look on my website, which is just my name, www.dansaintromain.com, I'm the only one, thank goodness. But if they just go to my website, I have several resources. One, I have a blog. Every Sunday night, as some of your viewers know, I type a behavioral blog. I have pages and pages and pages of posts on behavior and discipline. What's interesting is the blogs come from several places. They come from the standpoint of being a teacher, but they also come from the standpoint of being a dad of 4 children. And I tell you that because I think parents like the blog just as much as teachers do. So some teachers will email me and say, okay, I like your information for me as a teacher, but you have rocked my world as a parent. So the blog might be a really good resource for them. I also have a lot of information on teaching social skills. Obviously, I have books of songs. I have books of lessons for teaching following directions, getting attention. Now, I will tell you, Vanessa, all of my resources were designed with kindergarten children in mind, but I have pre-K, first grade, second grade teachers all over the country that are using all of the resources. And I will tell you, they were designed in a classroom with kids in front of me. And so teachers come back and it's like, oh my gosh, you really understand my children. Um, so I have a lot of resources to teach social skills. And if they go to my webpage and look on the products page, I do a whole video explaining my songs book, my lessons, my resources for teaching emotional literacy with Juan Pablo the Chameleon. So there are a whole lot of resources there. And then, as you know, 2 years ago at the summit, we talked about the book Teach Skills and Break Habits. They can find that on my website. And that book is about moving away from rewards and punishment and specifically easy ways to teach and to hold kids accountable rather than punishing. What does that look like? What does teaching look like? And how do we get away from it? And the book that I just came out with, obviously, are the positive behavior principles. And it's the 9 principles. You've already had a little flavor of some of them, but building relationships, modeling ritual and novelty, channeling behavior. I could go on and on. But that book has just been released, and I'm very proud about that one. The first book, Teach Skills and Break Habits, is really designed for pre-K through 5th grade. This book, Positive Behavior Principles, is all levels pre-K through high school. So they can find that information on my website. I am featuring that this year at, I'm doing a session on it at Frog Street Press here in Texas. SDE National Staff Development for Educators. I'm doing a full day training on the 9 principles in Las Vegas. Here in Texas at TEPSA, which is our administrators conference. And I'm not sure when this gets aired, so I have to go back and look at the timeline. But there are a lot of resources on my website, be it the books and the resource for teaching social skills. And then obviously all my contact information is there. So that's probably the best way that your viewers can check in with me. With regard
Absolutely.
to this.
So that's dansaintromain.com. Very, very good. That is where you can find everything, including the books, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, I would love to thank you again, Dan, for joining us today, and to all of you who tuned in to watch along. And if you would like to spend a little more time with any of the ideas and suggestions we discussed in this session or any of the others, don't forget you can bring those sessions home with you along with some terrific bonuses. Just click on the link below this video, and don't forget, prices go up the day after the conference ends. I want to thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm Vanessa Levin, and this is Dan St. Romain. Thank you, Dan.
And I'm going to thank you, Vanessa. I can't tell you how many, in closing, how many places I've gone around the country where people have said, I saw you at the summit. I saw you at the summit. So I want to thank you for hosting this summit specifically designed for early childhood educators, because I think this vehicle is phenomenal. So from the standpoint of a speaker on the series, I want to thank you on behalf of the other speakers and the teachers. I feel so blessed and honored to be part of it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dan. It's always a pleasure. Thanks again, everybody. Until next time, bye.